minutes here and then we'll jump on and get going. So.
I started the recording.
Thanks, Leanne.
Mm-hmm.
21, and that's a one-page summary of what. No, you're not allowed to.
Well, you ready to go, Amanda?
Yes, I'm ready.
Well, good morning, everybody. We see a lot of familiar faces here this morning, and I want to welcome you back to, I think we're about week number 6 on our virtual program this year. I guess it makes sense that we couldn't meet in Columbus and get together, so we'll just stretch this year out as long as we can here and have more and more to talk about. But the reason for getting together today and this topic today was basically to bring you up to date on where we are now. We had an opening in the program, so we slipped this one in, with our success on House Bill 665 the other day and the review from that. There's lots of questions out there, and so Amanda agreed to join us today to do that. One quick note, please keep yourself muted during the presentation. It is recorded, and we will have this posted to our YouTube channel within 24 hours on the OFMA website. And please, by all means, sign up on that OFMA website for YouTube. There seems to be some confusion with that. You do not have to sign up to watch these videos. However, if you sign up, it gives us more flexibility from a YouTube perspective and what we do to manage the YouTube account if we have more users. So please get as many people to sign up on that as you can. Rest assured, from an OFMA standpoint, this board is working around the clock. We've had endless meetings. They're 24 hours a day. We haven't shut anything down. We've left every stone, we've turned every stone over we can possibly turn over, and we continue to beat the bushes. We had a quick board meeting last night, and I would say that's as united as the OFMA board's been since I can remember, but they are united in pressing forward and giving you all the option to have a full fair this year. It's still an uphill climb. There's no doubt about it. We're heading up the hill, but we got to do the best we can. We got to stay united on the front too. We're only as strong as we are as a group. And so that's where we're at. I'm going to kick it over to Amanda to go ahead and get started. I know we've got a special guest with us today, and we want to get him up here on the front of the program because I'm sure he's got a ton of other stuff he's got to take care of. So Amanda is with our Government Advantage lobbyist group, works for us around the clock as well. So Amanda?
Great. So thank you so much, Paul. So I'm going to defer the first part of my time to our special guest. Representative Don Jones is on the line here. He's somebody that the OFMA has worked with even prior to him being elected to the House of Representatives. And we were ecstatic to see he was appointed for 2021 into the House Majority Leadership Team and will serve as Majority Whip. He's somebody that we worked really closely with on Senate Bill 375, and the task force that was proposed in the bill was actually a brainchild of his that we were able to bring forward and pass through the legislature. Even though it was vetoed, it was still a very important exercise for this industry to talk to legislators directly about what you've been through this year. So when I kick it over to Representative Jones to make a few remarks and hear his insights.
Thank you, Amanda. It's good to see everyone. I will be brief because I've got another call at 10:15. So thank you for the time here with you this morning. So let me just give you a quick update. I have had calls from a lot of people, wanting to know how should we plan, and I've told everyone to plan for a full fare, plan for what you would typically do, get your contract signed, because I really truly understand that we cannot go through another summer like we did last year. For our vendors, our ride companies, our fare boards, the 50,000 helped a lot, but it was just a patch for some. And I understand, the bigger fares, 50,000 is they'll spend that much on entertainment for one evening. But for smaller fares, it was a bigger help. But moving forward, the question about 375, we added the amendment in on 375 for the work group to try to make that a lot more palatable for the governor, hoping that he would not veto that bill. And that was the purpose of that amendment, and was to try to say, hey, let us go ahead and move forward. I've had numerous conversations with the governor's office, and in fact, I just talked with Dan McCarthy, one of his his folks, last Friday, I believe Thursday or Friday. But and I'll be honest, his exact words were, Don, our hope is we don't have hardly any restrictions on anything by summertime, because the vaccination program is getting rolled out. The numbers are going down. I mean, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, shut your TV off. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to everything. Every news outlet in the world, the headline is every night is the pandemic or the coronavirus, and they're trying to bring another strain in from another country or whatever. I'm not saying it's not real, folks. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it is real. The virus is real, but when we look at the total number of deaths in the state of Ohio in 2020, they were, I don't believe, any higher than what they were in 2019. But that's the kind of stuff that you're not going to hear that from the mainstream media, because it's not a good story. So, but as far as we are, I've talked with help me, I have a brain freeze here. Dave from Gosha.
David Drake.
David Drake, thank you. David Drake called me the day after the House Bill 370 or Senate Bill 375 was vetoed, very upset. But he had a good plan, and I think you folks are involved in that plan as far as putting your plan together. And I'm going to say this. I said, David, put it together. Let me know when you do, and then I can take it to the governor and say, hey, look, here's where we are. Let's get this thing rolling now. And I think that's a better approach, rather than having somebody write the plan for you. You write the plan as far as a group of fare managers and Greater Ohio showmen, and then we can work from there. And I'll say this: there's a lot of people in the legislature that knows the importance of a county fair, and they do not want to do what we did last year. Last year, we did what we had to do, because that was the only option we had after we got through July, which was frustrating, because the success, and this is the question that was never answered by anyone in the governor's office. Tell me where the outbreaks have been and why we need to go to a junior fair. And I never got an answer to that question. And I think it was just out of fear, because of some false reporting, and we all can agree with that. So, but I guess I will say this: Paul, I think you mentioned we've got to stick together. We've got to be united, and we've got to say, hey, look, we can do this. I know we can do this. I mean, hey, I sat as president of a board for 9 years and was on it for 18. And I've said, we are the most resourceful people in the world. We'll figure out a way to have a fair and make it so that it's safe. We don't want anybody to get sick. I mean, we've been through pandemics before, not to this scale, but I mean, we went through the swine flu and the bird flu, and yeah, we had to cancel some bird shows, poultry shows a couple of years ago, but it wasn't the end of the world. We still made it a good experience for the kids, and I mean, they benefited from it. And our kids did benefit last year, but that still doesn't pay the bills for a fair board whenever the end of the day comes. So I did have that conversation with the governor's staff Thursday or Friday, and told him that you folks were working on a plan, and he said, that's great. Let me know as soon as it's done. So I would like to probably get with Amanda and find out where that bill or where that plan is, and encourage you to, the sooner we can get it into his hands, I'm going to say the better, because the budget's going to start to take center stage. The budget is starting to take center stage already, because he dropped his version yesterday. So there's a lot of pieces that are going to have to work, but I will say this, I kind of hoped I would be on the budget committee, but I did not get chosen for the budget committee. And I think it was because there's issues like this that members of leadership are going to have to try to foster through the system. And I'm okay with that. I am, because this is going to affect as many people as the budget. So, so that's where we are. I will say I've had a couple of questions on 665, the revisions in the red book. And Amanda, I'll need to get with you. One of them was about, we raised that. It says the maximum price from 800 to 1600. I thought it probably should have said minimum, but I don't know. We'll have to look at that. But we can talk that later. But I guess I'll take any questions before I have to jump off.
Representative Jones, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for what you've been doing for the fairs in the state of Ohio. Obviously, I met you before you ever took this position in Columbus, and you and Senator Schaefer have been a huge part of this. I've talked to each of you to thank you for what you have done, and I want to continue to do that. And I think the OFMA board and all the fairs in the state of Ohio owe you and the rest of the people in Columbus a big thank you. That's from me.
Rod, thank you. And I mean, hey, I told everybody agriculture has been a big part of has been a huge part of my life, and the fair was a huge part of my life. And I told the speaker, you'll get a little chuckle out of this. We've got sessions scheduled Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, the last week in June, and that's the Harrison County Fair week. And I told him, I said, you might not have a majority whip the last week of June. I said, I might be at the fair instead. So, but and that's my goal is and I appreciate it, but I appreciate the efforts of you folks. I mean, for a bunch of unpaid volunteers, which is what we are as far as fair board members, we it's a passion that we're very deeply passionate about, and I appreciate that. And I don't think there's probably a group in the state of Ohio that's as passionate about what we do as the fair managers and our fair boards. So thank you.
Any other?
Just,
Howard, you're super quiet. Why is Howard so quiet?
Just for an update, that task force that he referred to there is a joint effort between the Ohio Fair Managers, the Greater Ohio Showmen, the Ohio Festivals Board. We've met several times already. Myself, Rod Arter, Howard Call, Tim Massey, Dan Bullen are on it from OFMA. And just as a follow-up, Mr. Jones, that report, we saw the third version of that late last night in that plan, and we're trying to get that finished up. I think within a few days we'll have that wrapped up and have something to present. Obviously, it's a starting point. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of additions to it as we go through, but we certainly have some place to start. So,
thank you for that.
Well, Don knows I've got a 5-horse paint stirrer, and I keep stirring it pretty good. So.
Well, Howard, you did a great job on the night of the national championship game. I was trying to watch the Buckeyes, and that tweet that you put out about he closed all the fairs down. I was like, oh my God, Howard, what are you doing? I'm trying to watch a football game, and you let the bees out of the hive. But you got to.
That's okay. I got them back in there.
So
sometimes you got to stir it to get their attention, Don, and you know that.
You did, Howard. So well done.
Thanks, Don.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you guys for what you do.
Yep, we'll get there. And thank you for joining and giving some reassurances. I know it can be frustrating, as you said, all of these folks being volunteers and knowing they need to get started on their plans for this summer. And they want an answer today. And I know it's really frustrating that we can't give an answer today.
Well, and Amanda, to that point, that's what I told the governor. I said, we're not doing to those early fairs what we did last year and not give them any guidance until the middle part of May. With less than a month to plan for a fair. I mean, because quite frankly, that's why, some of our fairs start off as junior fair because they didn't know what they were going to do. So I said, we need to have this done. I said, my deadline, I will say this and share this with you folks. My deadline for an answer is March 1st. I think by drop that in my mind is the latest that we can give direction to county fairs is March 1st. And that's, that's still going to be March, April, May. That's 3 months before, our first fairs in June. So there's where
And
we
I think-
are.
And to your point, I think also, they need to stick with it. Like
Right.
that was even more frustrating that
Oh,
we
you're
had
right.
guidance that was approved and sent out and signed, and then it changed.
Right. Well, and I'll say this, an encouraging thing is that the Ohio Beef Expo is going to take place in March at the state fairgrounds. So that's an event that was canceled last year that they have given the green light to. So they're going to have the Ohio Beef Expo mid-March, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st, I believe. So, but and I don't know how many restrictions or what's been laid upon their plate, but they are planning to have a full show as they've had in the past. I'm sure mask will still be a requirement, but if they got to wear a mask, I don't like them. I don't wear them unless I absolutely have to. But I mean, if I got to do something like that, I mean, in March, I'll do it.
That's great news.
Okay. Any other questions? Amanda, if you get questions later on, just contact me. That's
Okay,
fine.
thank you so much.
So, all right, folks, have a great meeting, and we'll hope to be with you soon with some better news. Okay.
Yeah, we're actually on your calendar for February 10th to present the recommendation. So we'll talk to you
Yep.
then.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
All right. Well, so I think that was a lot of great information for you all to have, and a little bit of reassurance that the legislature is 100% behind you and the work that you do. As we said at the top of the session, while it was disappointing that Senate Bill 375 was vetoed, it wasn't actually that big of a surprise, and it was still really important for the OFMA, for the GOSA, for the fairs and festivals to get to publicly talk about why it is so important that you have that leg time to get scheduled. You need to get your contract signed. You need to plan any mitigation that you might need to do. Hopefully your sanitizing stations and all of that, you're kind of in that groove now from last year and any other events that you might have had. Separately, so we're starting this new General Assembly. As Representative Jones said, they're really just getting started. The first order of business, and really will take up a lot of the first half of the year, is the state budget. The governor did start releasing some of those details yesterday. I was encouraged to see the FAIR grant program make an appearance in the as introduced version that we'll see fully here soon, but that's $4.7 million to get out to the fairs. We know it's not enough, like we get that, but it is very encouraging because that grant program, when we've got it the last few years, was always added to the budget by the legislature. So this is the first time that we've seen it in the as introduced version. So we're not starting from zero, we're starting the negotiation at 4.7 million. So going for more, we might have an opportunity to get more funding there. I don't envision a scenario where the legislature takes that out. So we're looking probably at a minimum of $4.7 million to get out to fairs. The Senate is also making a bill, which is Senate Bill 22, a priority. And that legislation, while not directly related to county ag societies, is a more broad piece of policy on public health orders, executive orders, because I think there has been frustration with the legislature that, the governor has put out these public health orders and declared states of emergency that have now lasted for almost a year. And so they want to add some checks and balances so that any emergency order or public health order can only last for 30 days without legislative approval for it to continue. So that certainly falls, the fair orders fall under that. So, if this bill were to pass and get enacted, no order could last more than 30 days so that maybe if your fair is happening during that exact same time, you might be impacted, but it will provide some relief, I think, for these indefinite closures. What else? So as we talked about, there is that work group, and Paul can talk about more of their work. We kind of figured after the bill got vetoed that we do not need a piece of legislation to have a task force. So we just went ahead and started meeting anyways, even outside of the veto. So we can still present those findings to, legislators, the administration. We didn't need that veto, didn't slow us down in the need to put together some recommendations on how to safely operate fairs. So I guess I'll just kick it back over to Paul if you want to talk a little bit about that process and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's fine. Amanda, thank you. Like I mentioned, that task force is a joint group between GOSA, Greater Ohio Showmen's, and the Ohio Festivals Board and Ohio Fair Managers. We've met several times. Basically, what we did is we went back to the very beginning and took the reopen or restart Ohio orders that were originally written out of the governor's office, and we started with those to dissect them and add and subtract language to them. To try and get things worked forward and have a plan to present. Obviously, the agricultural end of it last year, was okay to go forward with the junior fair. And then, of course, with the open class, we figure we can incorporate that into those plans. So we left those as is, and then we started working on these to come up with them. Like I said, we saw the third revision late last night. I haven't had time yet to review it, but I'm confident we've got something to take, something to put in our hand to take to the governor. And try and get him to sit at the table. I think the one thing that we might be prepared for or want to be prepared for, and we haven't written this out, but I suspect it's going to come back on the other side, is there's going to be some kind of a sliding scale in here. I sent a text message to the governor the other day. His answer came back, of course. I asked him if we could get this worked out. He said, of course, but we won't know where the virus is at and where we're at, and it'll change throughout the summer. And with his opening of the curfew the other day, I think what we're seeing is he's going to set a sliding scale out there. So I think that's one thing that we might want to be prepared for. I don't take that to the bank because we have not put that in this draft, but there might be a sliding scale here where some of the festivals in April are going to be treated differently than the festivals in October. And that could generate down to our fairs where we might have a little tighter restriction on our early fairs and what we've got on the fairs at the end of the year, provided the numbers stay down, provided the vaccine rolls out, provided we make positive steps forward. Otherwise, it could not change as we go forward. So the opening could stay the same as we go forward, throughout the year. We just don't know yet. So that's just one thing to be prepared for. Like I said, we're going to get that over to Representative Jones right away here. I think within the next few days, I'm confident we've got a starting point. The biggest avenue is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We know how to run a fair and we know how to do it safely. Like he said, we've been through this several times. I mean, this isn't the first pandemic we've dealt with or the first thing we've dealt with at a fair level. So, but the key to it is getting the governor to the table and getting them to commit. And on the other side of it, like Amanda said, and this is something I push for very much, if we come up with an agreement, whatever that agreement is, he has to be willing to toe the line and stay with that agreement regardless of the results. So no matter what, we agree to go forward, he stays with it. He can't change his mind halfway through in the middle like he did last year. It's just unacceptable. So, and that's a big sticking point for me. I know personally, it just can't be done. So. Amanda?
That's really all that I have. So I guess we could just open it up to questions, or if you have suggestions about things that you would like to see in the recommendations. If you'll remember, that original order on how to hold a fair was out. What were some of the things in that you thought were reasonable, some of the things you thought were not reasonable, so the task force can have that input?
Yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and get in the process on muting yourself, if you've got questions. Two more things I would add. One was that with that report, the one thing that we worked very hard on was to try and get it out of the hands of the local health departments. And that's something we're also going to push for with the governor, that we took the verbiage out of that report. If you remember from that original report, it would say, grandstands, 50% capacity, maximum of 2,500, seating to be arranged by your local health officials, and da 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 da. We took the verbiage out that refers to local health officials. Now, I don't know if we'll keep it out, if it'll get put back in, but I mean, that's where we're starting, is with that out, because there seems to be such a, as you know, there's such a trend in these local health departments where we've got some that, they just couldn't care less, and we've got some that are the Gestapo, trying to police everything along the way. And it's been, it's been Howard's thought and our thought that, we need to get the health departments back to inspecting the food trailers and doing that part of their job, and get them out of this other avenue where they don't know a whole lot about. The other thing, on a side note, had a meeting yesterday with the Department of Agriculture. As you know, Dave Miram is the new fair official, ride safety or ride inspector, head of the ride department and the fairs division down there at ODA. Met with him and Morgan Lyles about some other issues. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up with what we're hearing, but I was surprised at the attitude that came out of the Department of Agriculture yesterday through Dave and through Morgan. Very positive about moving forward this year. And, I guess I'll just say it, I had a feeling that ODA just pretty much forgot about fairs, and aren't that interested in supporting us, but that was not the message that came yesterday from Dave out of that ride division and fair office. He's working on getting the inspectors back to work. He's got guys at Cedar Point and Kings Island already. He's got a plan put forward to try and get things up to date and get things running back in that department. And they also committed, I talked to him again at great length yesterday. He called me in the afternoon. He committed to what we were working on with these Red Book changes. We got House Bill 665 in and passed. That's the law section. That'll take effect in 90 days. However, the rule section, we have to start over on with them. We started this process 3 years ago, but he's very committed to following through on that rule changes and that part of the Red Book that we need to clean up. A lot of that is affected by the law changes in the front. So the law is going to change. We need to update the rules to go along with it. Plus, there's rule changes we'd like to see in the annual report filing, junior fair affidavits, all that kind of stuff that we have to report on. And he's committed to trying to streamline all that and work with us. And that's the first time we've had a commitment to that extent to get that stuff done too. Now, the only downside to that rule change is they basically said it's not going to happen until fall at the earliest. Obviously, we have to go through it with them. They have to sign off on it. It has to go to is it Common Sense? I think Common Sense Initiative Committee, to be looked at. Then it's got to go back to JCAR. Then it's got to come back out. So while we've got the law section changed and it'll be in effect in 90 days, the rule section is going to drag on here, and it's going to be a little work in progress to get that cleaned up.
That's why it's called a long-term plan, Paul.
Yeah, that's why I didn't understand that long-term planning committee, when they did it and they said, do this, I thought, long-term planning committee. And you guys know me well enough to know that I'm not good at long-term. I like answers tomorrow. I'm not real good on that long-term thing, but we're working on it. We are making progress. I mean, I hope you can understand we're making some progress on that side of it. The other thing I think Amanda alluded to is the budget. The governor dropping the budget out there, that $4.7 million we heard, they throw numbers around like this, like it's candy. We all know, just like Representative Jones said, for a larger fair and that $50,000, was a Band-Aid, and it tore off, the first time it got wet. For smaller fairs, it might've helped them out. And this just isn't going to be acceptable. State fairs in the same situation. And remember, State Fair is a member of the Ohio Fair Managers. It's not 94 fairs, it's 95 fairs. The State Fair is one of us. They support us, they stand by our side, and we stand by their side too as a member. We have to be conscious of getting that State Fair open back up and running. And you want to talk about turmoil, they're in a bad state right now. I just don't know how else to say it. They're in bad shape down there. So they need all the help we can give them too. That being said, I think it's important that we get a financial number together on our fairs to be able to have when we go to the table with the governor and we're starting to talk about this financial number stuff. It's going to amount to a number that you submitted on your annual report each year and with your Hinkle report. However, if we go to ODA or if we go to the auditor and we make a public records request for this information, they're talking several months before we get that information, before they can compile it and get it back to us. So within the next few days or within this next week, please watch out for, we're going to try and set up a document. We're going to work on it first thing tomorrow morning, get some documentation set up that we can send out to you that you can go on and report 2017, 18, and 19's revenue and gate revenue and stuff. We'll have a couple quick questions there. It'll be simple stuff. You can go right to your annual report. You can pull that number right out of your chart of accounts and put it in there. We're not asking, we're not trying to pry into anybody's business, but I think it's important that we have this number. The governor's been real, he's touted himself about this $50,000 he gave us last year. And we all know that just didn't, it was nice. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't cut it. They need to understand the total financial burden that these fairs are facing. So we'll be looking for that too here within the next few days. So we need your help getting that stuff put together. So anyhow, back to questions. So let's get it opened up to questions. We don't have to make this a terrible long session this morning. I know y'all got work to do. So any questions we can answer?
Paul,
Yes.
this is Debbie from Jefferson County. One of the things that threw us was limiting the days of the fair. In one of those orders, they wanted us to go to like 3 days, 4 days. And it makes it hard for the fairs that have the one sale that want to feed into that to get all that stuff done. Are you guys going to present something for the full amount of days? Or are you still thinking about cutting back?
Well, if I'm not, I appreciate it, Debbie. Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, that restriction on days was put forth by Dr. Forche and the Department of Agriculture, not through the governor's orders. There were no written orders that I recall seeing that limited the days. It was that Dr. Forche mandated that animals be removed within 72 hours, if I recall right. So that's where that was. So we can certainly address that. Like I said, that wasn't in the original orders to open fairs. We were allowed to open for the full time, but it was the amount of time that the animals could stay on the grounds. And I believe, this isn't something new out of ODA. They pushed for this with the hogs for probably the better part of 6 or 7 years now, with hogs getting them off that fairgrounds, in less amount of time. So I know I agree with you, Debbie. I am not a fan of that. So we can put a note on that in there and make sure we address that as well. So
We have a real issue with packers in our area.
Sure.
And start splitting up what we're doing just creates havoc for the few that want to do it. It's got to be all or nothing. And we got to do what's best for these kids. And putting the sale one day, getting this stuff off the fairgrounds, it's impossible to do it within 3 days.
Yep. Note taken. And I would agree with you 100%. We're in the same boat. We're on a holiday weekend, so we just don't have that option. I mean, we can't do anything different. He wanted the 72 hours for us meant we had to ship on a holiday. And obviously that's not going to happen. So yeah, good point. Thank you very much.
Okay, one more thing.
Yep.
Can I just interject here real quick on that original question for follow-up? So I know that there was a component to the other order dealing with the curfew. So people had to be off the grounds, I think by like 10 o'clock. Was that an issue, or do you think it should be aligned? Like if there's, general curfews, we'll comply with that. But if there's not, then we don't have a curfew either.
From our standpoint, we interpreted that as visitors. The campers were still there, and they were the people with the animals. So a curfew can come into play with your midway, there's no doubt. But we interpreted that as to campers were going to be there.
Yeah, I think that's a correct interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other question I had is coming up with a plan as of the March 1st date. And I think you alluded to, what do we do with this COVID-19 that's constantly changing the numbers. We don't want locked in to limited or all kinds of restrictions on where we are March 1. That worries me because our fair isn't until August. So how do we still plan? It's a hard plan, there's no doubt.
Right, there's no doubt about it. I think that one thing we'll go two sides to this. Putting a plan together for your fair is going to be important. Putting a master plan together and having it that you can actually hand in, hard copy in your hand. We did one last year. I think it was 21 pages long. We started at the beginning. We went all the way to the end. We explained how we were going to, everything from clean office handles, doors, toilets, and everything else right on down the line, how we were going to handle every little thing there was. And those plans are out there. And part of that task force the other day's conversation was that we make a generic plan to that extent, and have it available for everybody to look at and try and plug your own elements into it on your fair. So that's one thing, part of the plan, like you say, and you can assume hopefully in August that you can expand maybe better, less restrictions than what maybe an early fair can. But that's where I alluded to on the sliding scale. That's why and I'm not saying this is, for granted, but I just got a sneaky feeling that he's going to hit us with some kind of a sliding scale and a number component that the numbers need to be at this point, to go forward. So we might have to have a plan A and a plan B, and do the best you can to work with those things as you go forward. But that would be my hope, that at the bare minimum, we come up with a sliding scale. So that on March 1st, we say, yeah, you can go forward with fairs, and this is what you can expect in June, provided the numbers are like this, and this is what you can expect in July, a bare minimum, and then expand it throughout the year. So that would be my personal goal. That's just, and my suspicion is what he's going to want to do as well. So it's not our intention to lock an August fair into the same restrictions that we see on March 1st.
Okay.
It's not our
the goal would also be that the recommendations, using this March 4th date would be the most restrictive, and that the restrictions could only loosen, not tighten. So to your point, if you get into August and say it says, some recommendation of 6 feet distance, well, if that's not a restriction anymore, then it's not a restriction anymore for you either. So we would hope that whatever we start with on March 1st is the most restrictive that it's going to be.
Okay, that makes sense.
More questions? Mr. Arter, are you still on here today? Rod Arter, president from Fair Managers here. Rod, do you have anything to add, subtract, multiply?
Well, I guess we probably need to continue to reach out to our legislatures, send them letters, send them phone calls. Like I said earlier, we have a large amount of friends in Columbus that are certainly working in our favor to get these fairs back to full blown. So that'd be the best advice I could give, is reach out to your local politicians and tell them what you want and how they can help.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Rod. Howard did ask me to put together a kind of a draft model letter for fairs to send to their elected officials to get support once our plan is finalized. So that will go out as well, and we'll ask, for all of your fair board members to, send that draft or model letter to your state rep and state senator to garner that additional support, so they can see that we've taken it upon ourselves to do that work on the front end. And I think that will be very well respected by the legislatures, that we've, taken this bull by the horn and said, we're going to take ownership of our own plan.
The only other thing I would add is I would like to agree with Paul and promise you that the OFMA board is working around the clock, doing what we can, talking to people, pushing buttons, whatever we can to just get this thing moving forward as fast as we can. So that's all I got, Paul.
Thanks, Rod.